Kuchaks. This week is Parshas Nitzavim. And in this week's portion, the Torah tells us, Hanistaros Hashem Elokeinu, that which is hidden is the Lord your God. V'haniglos, and that which is revealed, Lanu Uvanenu Adalam, is to us and our children forever. And Rashi explains the verse that it's really an answer to a question that you might have when you read a few verses before. Because before it said if somebody has an idea that they want to rebel against God, it implies that the whole Jewish people will be punished. And therefore, a person would ask, how's that possible? How could I know what's in somebody else's mind? Why should I be punished? So Rashi tells us, the Torah is answering us, no, that which is hidden is just between God and that individual. But that which is revealed, that which is in the open, that is the responsibility of the whole Jewish people. And yes, the Jewish people will suffer for the sins of others. And Rashi says, he goes on to say that you might be troubled by that, the fact that we're responsible for others, but he says, no, that once the Jewish people heard the brachos and the klolos, the blessings and the cursing on Har Grizim and Har Eiffel, there's two mountains when the Jews crossed the Jordan, that they heard these curses. At that point, they took responsibility for all of Klal Yisrael, for all of the Jewish people. Every individual is responsible for his fellow Jew. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh. Every Israelite, every Jew is responsible one for the other. And even that, you might ask the question, why should I be responsible for someone else who does something, whether it's down the block or maybe across the ocean? And I think the answer is we have to see ourselves as part of one family. As an example, if you have a family, father and a mother and a few children, and the father or the mother commits a crime and goes to prison, what happens? The children suffer. They suffer the indignity that the community knows that their parent is in jail. They're losing a father or mother on a daily basis. They might be losing an income. There's an unbelievable amount of consequences that occur as a result of that crime which is committed. So, however unfair that seems, that's the way of the world. You can't completely separate every individual from every other individual. And in one family, we're all responsible for each other. I think we understand that. Now you could expand that and say, oh, all of the Jewish people are all B'nai Yisrael, the sons of Israel, the children of Israel. We're all one family. And therefore what one does affects the other. It might still bother you to say that in regard to a sin which is bein adam lamakom, between man and God, a sin which is maybe not something which is affects the everyday life of the Jewish people. But I think it's easier to understand in regard to what we do as a people in the public sphere. And this is, I think, a message which we should take home before Rosh Hashanah, and especially this year when we know that there's a rise of anti-Semitism and the world seems to be turning against us as a whole. We have to realize that every Jew is responsible one for the other. Now, if you live in Israel, that's very serious. You're responsible. You have to go fight a war. You have to make sure that the economy keeps churning. You have to make sure that there's unity in the face of the enemy. Here, when we're in the diaspora, we're outside of Israel, it's harder to understand. It's harder to relate to. But the truth is, we're all part of one people. And we have to realize that what we do has an effect. Now, that could be in a spiritual sense. You should do some mitzvahs. You should do some good deeds. Give charity, specifically. Support the country of Israel. Perhaps send money for the chayalim, for the soldiers in Israel. But it's also true just in the public sphere. When there's anti-Semitism, when people are attacking Jews for this or for that, whether it makes sense or not, we have to be there to support them. We have to be there to argue on their behalf and to also make sure that whatever we do is a Kiddush Hashem. Whatever we do is a sanctification of the name of God and not a Chilul Hashem, not a desecration of the name of God. So when someone sees us in the street and they know we're Jewish and we act in a way which is inappropriate, that doesn't say much for the Jewish people in the eyes of the person who's watching. And especially today, they're going to paint us with one broad stroke and say, you see, You see what the Jewish people are like. So we have to make sure that we're responsible. We have to make sure that whatever we do is a Kiddush Hashem, is a sanctification of God's name. But I would say even more than that. I think it's important that we show unity, that we show that we're proud to be Jewish people, that we're not hiding. And that's also, it could be argued that it's better just to keep a low profile. But I would suggest that with the exception of when that might pose a danger, and I understand then you might want to hide your identity, we have to walk around as proud Jews. We have to make sure that what we do and what we say and how we act is consistent with the morals and the ethics that we say we represent because we're of the Jewish people and we follow the Torah. But we also have to be able to say, no, we're proud to be Jewish. We're not going to hide. We're not going to go under a rock, basically, and make believe we don't exist. We have to walk around identifiable as Jews, whether that means wearing a kippah in the street, whether that means wearing a Magen David, or maybe not being embarrassed of your Jewish name, or maybe speaking up when someone says something, as long as you do it in the appropriate way, and that's very difficult in these times. It's hard to keep your cool. I know I've had that trouble myself when faced with people who are making ridiculous and unreasonable arguments. But I think that's what we have to do. We have to be able to say, no, we are Jewish, we're proud of it, we stand for what's right, and we're willing to stand up for our fellow Jews. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. Every Jew is responsible one for the other. And when we're going into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and God is judging us, He's judging us both as individuals and part of Klal Yisrael, and part of the Jewish people. We have to be aware of that. We have to make sure that we're not just worrying about ourselves, not just worrying about what's going to happen to us, but what's worrying about the Jewish people. So when comes Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we're praying, and we're thinking about what we could do to make our lives better, we have to think what we could do to make the lives of the Jewish people better. And hopefully with that schus, with that merit, God will see that we really do care one Jew for a fellow Jew. And this year will be a year of peace and security. Good Shabbos.